Good day, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of Unit 2. And for part 2 of this unit of ESL policy and syllabi or syllabuses, we are going to look at the JSC, Junior Secondary Certificate level. Okay, the syllabus is the one that we're going to look at. And we are not going to look at it in details because I hope that you get to read it in details on your own time. For this specific lesson, we're just going to have a glance over the structure, what is within the syllabus. But I encourage you to read it thoroughly on your own time. All right, the JS syllabus is comprising of grades 8 and 9. Yeah, 8 and 9. And it was, when was it? They say it will be implemented. It was implemented in 2017 for grade 8 and then 2018 for grade 9. And for our lesson, for our course, Teaching Methods of English, the syllabus that we're going to focus on, in more details, and our activities are going to be based on is the NSSCO syllabus. All right, the grades 10 to 11 is the one from which our activities are going to be derived. Most of our activities are going to be derived. All right, here we have the syllabus. And then the copyrights are given to the Ministry of Education, Art and Culture, 2016. And it was printed by NIAD. As I've mentioned, the table content is always like the map to guide you through the document. And here are the topics that have been covered in this specific document. We have got introduction, rationale, aim, inclusive education, link to other subjects, and cross-cultural issues, approach to teaching and learning, end of phase, competencies, summary of the learning content, which is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then each of those are like divided, they have subdivision as well. As you can see here, the reading has got reading comprehension and literature, the writing has got directed writing and creative writing. And the last skill, the learning content, is divided into 5, and the final one is grammar and usage. After that, we'll then look at the assessment, and the assessment, it talks about this. Under assessment, we have got continuous assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment, informal methods, evaluation, criterion, reference grades, grade descriptors, conducting and recording assessment objectives, continuous assessment detailed guideline, end of year examination detailed guideline, promotional marks, specific grid, assessment rubric, and glossaries. So those are the topics that are covered within this syllabus. Now let's move on to the introduction. What we have under introduction, it's just introducing to you what the syllabus is intended for whom it's intended, junior secondary phase, and the rationale. So some of these details I would want you to read on your own, but let's look at this. They say that by the end of the senior primary phase, learners should be able to develop English language literacy and communication competencies that form the basis for personal growth and lifelong learning. Do you see that what we teach, we're just not teaching them grammar, listening, do you understand those skills? But we hope that whatever that we teach them, it will in the end help them grow personally, like at the personal level, and become lifelong learners. All right. English, second language, like any other language, has the same potential to act as a catalyst for personal growth and to assist in the development of a broad general knowledge, positive attitude, critical thinking abilities, moral value, and the aesthetic sensibility. So we have a bigger role to play here, and not just teach them the skills that I've mentioned, but help them, become critical thinker, to have positive attitude, to broaden their general knowledge, and to have all these other aesthetic sensibilities. The potential is to enhance. This potential is enhanced by the rich and varied literature and scholarly heritage that is part of the English language. So yeah, that's what we're talking about, the rationale, the why behind this syllabus. And then we can see here like some of the particular features that this syllabus this phase hope that the learners will attain. All right, so read that on your own. And then here the aims, we have got the aims. The aims are stipulated, and then they have got the general aims to support creative and intellectual development, to help learners develop self-confidence and a better understanding of the world in which they live, to develop positive attitude, value, and understand of local and social cultural issues, to develop greater awareness of health and population issues, democracy and human rights, information and technology, HIV and AIDS, the environment, and individual responsibility regarding this, and to enable learners to talk, read, write about them. All right. And some of these issues, we have newer health issues like coronavirus, COVID-19. So these are some of the things that we have, like health issues that have come about, and we can include them in our discussions. And then the specific aims is to enable learners to communicate effectively in speech and writing in their second language, to enable the learners to express thoughts, ideas, experiences, and values as an essential part of personal development, and to develop proficiency in the medium of instruction, which is ESL, right? English as a second language. And the next part that has been discussed is inclusive education. Here is just to say that in the mainstream school, the schools that we teach, we might have, learners with some impairments, all right? And then as an English teacher, you should understand like the effect that the impairment has on the students when it comes to them learning, retaining information, expressing information, the different types of learning impairment, how it can impact, the spoken, written language, spelling, organizational skills, memory, and amongst others. And then we should also, when we have got learners with impairment, with whatever kind of impairment that they may have, you should still hold them at the high standard that you hold for students without impairment. Do you understand? Like, you have to challenge them. And then also, when you're in the class, you are expected to identify the impairment that the learners might have and provide the support that they need, and through various strategies, methods, and approaches to help them really cope in the classroom. And where learners with impairments are found in an ESL class, teachers are expected to liaise with parents or guardians and speak to such learners to find out how they were assisted or supported in previous grades. So you're not on your own in this whole situation. So you can talk to the parents and find out how are they helped and how can you continue helping them. All right, so all that is just about, impairment. Like, you should be aware of that, the students who are struggling. And then when it comes to teaching ESL, it's linked to other subjects or cross-cultural issues, and cross-cultural issues. There is no separation of this is just what we're going to cover in ESL, but you can link them to other subjects, and then we'll see how that happens. All right, we will go look at this summary. For this, I'll say that you must read on your own and get the details, in-depth details of how ESL is linked to other subjects and cross culture, cross curricular issues. Here we have a table. Here we have a table just indicating of some activities that you can do from when you're relating to other subjects. Let's say we have got even environmental education, and let's say examples of topics that you can have in environmental topics. Environmental education will be conservation, sustainability of the environment. So what kind of activity then can you do in a listening, focusing on the listening skill? So we've got listening to a text and do various aspects of environmental education and answer questions. So they will listen to a talk on conservation, for example, and then you do listening comprehension activities on it. And then speaking, discuss, and debate various issues of environmental education. So they can debate on if they are for or against sustainability of the environment, like whichever, like conservation of cheetah. Are they for that or are they against? They can have a debate or a discussion on that, or a presentation on conservation. And when it comes to reading, they could read various texts in English on aspects on environmental. So the theme will be environmental education, and then they can read and do reading comprehension or get information that they can use to respond in writing. All right, continuous writing or directed writing. So that's what we have. And then we have other issues too. And we have got other issues that they can have, and then the topics related to these subjects. And here are just like examples of what you can possibly do, like what activities can you do relating to these other subjects. Moving on, we are going to look at the approach to teaching language. So here, what has been really stipulated is that, and I think we have also mentioned that in the when we looked at the language policy, that whatever approach that we're going to use is going to be learner-centered education. And then it's learner-centered education. The learners are the one who are at the core of the teaching. You have to relate to their experiences, you have to relate to their knowledge, you have to relate to their background when you are teaching. All right. And then within the lessons, the learners are really active. They're involved actively in the learning process. And then this can also be done through group work, pair work, individual work, a whole class. And then they need to work cooperatively or collaboratively when they are learning. So you have to encourage that. They can really learn a lot from each other. And then, and you have to relate to the cultural richness of your learners, relate to the immediate environment, like the topics that are really happening in the immediate environment. Like for now, we have got COVID-19. Those are some of the topics that you can relate to, the things that are happening. And then you have to ensure that the learners, they feel secure in their personal and linguistic identity and value their own culture. You are not going to brainwash them or, look down on their own culture, but you have to integrate such, their culture within the lessons when you are teaching them. All right, and read in more details what they mean by learner-centered education. And the next topic, 7, is end of phase competency. Like what kind of competency are the learners in this junior secondary phase are expected to attain. All right, we have got like overall competency of this, but I will say that you should read upon them by yourself. All right, so we've got this competencies, like what are they supposed, or maybe you should look at them. The learners will be able to listen, observe for information and pleasure to text on everyday issues, children, literature, authentic material, appropriate for secondary language speaker, and respond in various way, and they should be able to listen and employ a few listening strategy through verbal and non-verbal action. And when it comes to speaking, this was listening, speaking, they will be able to communicate ideas, opinion, emotions adequately and appropriately in various situations. And when it comes to reading, we have got learners who will be able to read and view for information, enjoyment, and understanding easy children's literature and text on everyday issues, literature, and authentic materials, and respond critically in various ways. So this is just like the general, competencies that they are expected to. But these seem more like objectives anyways. And then for the summary of the learning content is divided into these 5 sections. We've got listening skills, speaking skills, reading, which also include literature, writing, and grammar. And I think we have seen that reading is divided into 2 sections and writing is also divided into 2 sections. And we'll see shortly. Here they say that the table below show areas of learning and activities in each of the 4 skills that should be acquired. But remember though that even if they are divided like this, like we have got the different skills, we are not going to teach them in isolation. They need to be taught integratively. Like you have to teach them, you need to integrate them and teach them in a holistic way. All right. And I think we need to emphasize on that. You cannot just say, today we are going to focus on listening. No, it's like listening and responding, either responding by speaking or responding by writing. Do you get? Or they can read. When they read, they need to respond either by speaking or by writing. And they listen. They either listen to you as a teacher or they listen to others. Do you understand? So it's like it's an integration of all these skills. And then when you teach, let's say writing, grammar will be focused on also. All right, grammar and usage. Or when they are listening, grammar and usage will be in some ways be integrated within that lesson. Now let's look at the learning content. So as we have seen here, the learning content is divided in such sections, right? Subsections. And here in listening, in order to assess the development of the listening skills, learners will have to respond either orally or writing. So obviously, even, the main focus is listening, still other skills will be employed. So they have to either, respond orally or in writing. The text and question or tasks used in the different grades will vary in length and difficulty according to the grade. So obviously the length and the difficulty for grade 8 will be different from grade 9. So grade 9 will be higher than grade 8. Enjoyment and appreciation of text will follow from the learners listening to, and will follow from learners listening to and discussing and understanding a variety of oral texts. And here when we have, the skill is then divided into learning objectives. So the learning objectives are quite, same for both grades. But then the difference comes with the difficulty, the length and difficulty. So we have got the learning objective. So this is like a little bit more general, and then the competencies are more specific. When you write the learning objective in your, let's say in your lesson plan, you say learners will listen for pleasure, learners will, do you understand? It should be a full sentence rather than just starting listen for pleasure. Learning objective, listen for pleasure. No, learners will listen for pleasure. And then here we've got the competencies, like by the end of the lesson, like let's say now you're writing the competency in the lesson plan, you say by the end of the lesson learners should be able to, and then you write the competency. And here is the same too, like by the end of the lesson, for instance, learners will listen for pleasure, and then you have to be specific with the competency. So we have the competency. It's quite detailed. I feel like the description of the learning objectives and competencies for this specific syllabus, the JS syllabus, they are quite detailed compared to the other two syllabus that we're going to look at after the secondary level syllabus. It's like here, okay, still listening, right? Listening continues, and then they are very specific in providing examples, like predict by the end of grade. Okay, by the end of the lesson, learners should be able to predict outcome following the events in a listened text. For example, predict what will come. Do you understand? Like good morning, say like this is formal, informal. They are very, very detailed in their competency, which is, I think, is really good in guiding a teacher, especially when you're starting off. Some of this information like you really need when you're teaching. And you can see how detailed, for grade 9 is more detailed than grade 8. I mean, it has more details, not more detailed, but rather it has more details, more information. And listening continues. Listening is quite long. Listening continues. And then the next one, the second one, is speaking. The teaching of speaking skills, like listening skill, is often neglected in the classroom, or teachers assume it does not require instruction or facilitation. In ESL, learners need to develop confidence in their own oral communication abilities. In order to communicate effectively through speaking, learners must demonstrate fluency, clarity, and an awareness of audience. Such verbal communication skills are learned through practice and observation of an effective speaker, such as a teacher. So you have the responsibility of being a role model for the learners when it comes to communication. Teachers need to focus on skills and strategies that will help the learners practice and negotiate meaning and communicate effectively with other people by providing a variety of stimulated communicative situation inside and outside the classroom situation. All right, so and you can see when we're looking at the language policy, there was reading and writing. What were we looking at? When we're looking at the lesson plan, the sample of the lesson plan, they have cross-curricular situation, or relating to other subjects, and they only written reading and writing. And then I told you that we should also have speaking and listening. And we have a tendency of really neglecting this skill, the listening, the oral skills. But we need to train our learners on how to speak effectively, how to listen effectively. All right, that's why they have it here. And these are now the objectives of the speaking skills and the competencies for grade 8 and then competencies for grade 9. And again, I'll say that you should read this in details on your own. So we have got speaking, continuing, speaking, continuing, speaking, continued, speaking, continued, speaking, continued. All right, speaking, continued. And then next we're going to look at the reading, which is the third subsection of the learning content. A culture of reading in ESL should be encouraged through extensive and intensive reading of a variety of texts that can be assessed informally or formally. The texts used in different grades will vary in length and difficulty according to the grades and should appeal to the interest of the learners. The use of other texts across the curriculum is highly encouraged and should include the following cross-cultural issues such as HIV/AIDS, population education, environmental education, human rights, and democracy. Enjoyment and appreciation of text will follow from the learners' reading, discussion, and understanding of a variety of text. As learners progress through the grades, they will gain increased skills in silent reading techniques. So you have to teach them silent reading techniques as well. All right, so what are the learning objectives? So here, read aloud the various texts to convey understanding of the text and to entertain. And these are the competencies that follow that falls under this objective. So these are the competencies. So pronunciation, correct pronunciation, rhythm, intonation, and stress. Develop increased fluency, speed, and accuracy when reading. So it's basically the same here for grade 9s as well. And we have got now more of the objectives. The learners will develop basic and critical comprehension of text. And here we've got some of the words, recognitions, and then we've got, this one is still the same as number 2. It's the second objective, and these are the competencies that follows. And the third one, so we have a number of them, reading comprehension. So this is basically reading comprehension. So reading is divided. We have got reading comprehension. So this is reading comprehension that we are doing. And then, reading comprehension. And the second sub category for reading is literature. So we've got reading comprehension and literature that falls under reading skills. So when it comes to literature, the text can be classified into genre, prose, drama, or poetry. Text can also take various forms and structure. Though essay writing can be classified into narratives, argumentative, expository, documents, and descriptive, literature text is, on the other hand, differentiated into narrative, story, expository information, and documents, charts, diagrams, and maps. Literally narrative story, which is story, like poetry, can take a descriptive or narrative form and structure. For example, we can find descriptive poetry and we can find narrative poetry. But you should take note that you are required to build on what has been taught in previous grades as well. So what you will teach in grade 9, you are building on what is taught in grade 8. And also what has been taught in grade 7. So the hope is that there's a continuation within grades. And what should differ is the degree of quality and quantity, like, the difficulty and the amount that they work with in the 2 grades will differ. All right, grade 9 will always be a little bit higher than grade 8. The text in the literature referred to and includes articles from newspapers, magazines, novels, drama, short stories, and poetry. All right, so, and these are the objectives. So it's always like divided in objectives and then the competencies. Objectives are a little bit more general compared to competencies. And I love how specific they are. They are more detailed in this syllabus. So you've got literature. And now we are moving on to writing, which is the 4th skill. By the end of the JS phase, learners should be capable of creating piece of writing from scratch with the support and guidance from the teacher. However, this is usually not the case. It is thus vital that time is spent on building vocabulary and the language the learners will need to create their own text. Learners at this level need to be given enough opportunity to practice writing various types of text. Please take note that teachers are required to build on what has been taught in previous grade as well. What should differ is the degree of quality and quantity of what learners are to write. So that's now when it comes to these 2 different grades. Quantity and quality is different for these grades. This one is lower and this one is higher because the grade is higher. And then here, when we're talking about we need to support the learners in vocabulary and language that they need to use, it's more of you expect the learners to write an essay, but before they write an essay, they can listen to the theme, the topic of which you want them to write. All right, as an example, because COVID is the topic that is really discussed nowadays. If you want them to write an essay regarding COVID, you can have them read an article let's say, on somebody who has been affected by COVID, it's a story that they will read All right. And then they'll listen to news on COVID. And then some of the vocabulary, they will discuss the vocabulary that has been used in the listening text and the reading text. And then they will know that vocabulary. And then when you ask them to write, all right, when you ask them to write, then they already have this vocabulary that they have gained from the listening text and the writing text that they can use in the writing. The listening, okay, they get the vocabulary from the listening and the reading text, and then they can use it in their writing. All right, so we have to support the learners. Don't just say go write an essay on something when you have not really exposed them to the necessary vocabulary, for example, or necessary structure that you want them to use in their writing. And here we have got the objectives and the competencies, just like the other skills. And when it comes to writing is divided into two types, into two subsections, which is directed writing, so the guided writing, in other words. And these are the objectives of the guided writing, directed writing, and here are the competencies. And then directed writing continues. And then the second subsection of writing is creative writing, and here we have got now the objectives of the creative writing and the competencies of creative writing. Creative writing, they even have autobiographies, descriptive, narrative, argumentative, expositorial, informational, and imaginative writing. And then it continues. The third, write creatively a variety of formal and informal text showing sense of audience and purpose. And here we have got the different types of writing that they have to do. And the fifth category of the learning content is grammar and usage. And here they emphasize the use of grammatical structure should be emphasized through enough exposure to the language rather than just teaching grammatical terminologies. Don't go to the class and teach them what is a noun, what is an adverb, and you stop there, but rather you should focus on really having them practice, like identifying the nouns, identifying the verbs, and them seeing how they function in context, rather than just like focusing on like what is passive, like what is okay, I'm blanking out here, I'm a little tired, but anyways, like what is like what is past tense, what is present tense, what is a verb, like, do you understand, like defining those like the grammatical terminology. You should avoid a lot of that. Like, kids don't really need to know those definitions. I mean, they should know how it functions. Like, the focus should be more on the functionality of the grammar rather than like knowing passively the terminologies. All right, so that's what we have there. And we have got, grammar is quite long. Grammar usage is very, very long, and it's very detailed. All right. Use of different pronouns in speech. And then they give you examples, which is really awesome. And then here we have more grammar usage. I think it's longer because they give more examples. Grammar usage continues. Grammar usage is continued. Oh, grammar continues. All right, we have got grammar. All right, grammar ends at page 49. Now we are moving on to other aspects. Assessment. A learner-centered curriculum uses broad range of knowledge and skills which are relevant to the knowledge-based society. The competencies of the syllabus stated what understanding and skills a learner must demonstrate as a result of teaching learning process, and which will be assessed. However, it is intended that the curriculum will be learning driven and not assessment or examination driven. I feel like many times we just teach and learn for the sake of, testing the learners at the end, but that shouldn't be the driving force. The driving force should be the learning process. You want the learners to learn as much as possible and not just for the sake of assessment. Assessment is essential because that's how you see if they have attained what you intended them to attain from the lesson. But the driving force should be learning. And here we have got different terms that falls under assessment. We've got continuous assessment. And here they tell you that, to capture the bigger picture, like the whole picture of what the learner is capable of, you get to assess them, to continuously assess them both formally and informally. All right. And then here they advise that the CA, continuous assessment, must be clear, simple, and manageable, explicit, anchored in learner-centered principle and practice. Teachers must elicit reliable and valid information of the learner's performance in the competency. And then progress should be, like the feedback on their progress should be given. You have to talk to the learners about their strengths and their weaknesses, where they should strengthen and weaknesses, and where they are doing well and why, and where and how they need to try a little bit more, like where they're not doing well, how do they need to improve, and which areas do they need to improve on. And the parents need also to be informed on their progress of their children. And here we have got now the formative and summative assessment. These are terms that we have covered in assessment and evaluation classroom, so we don't really need to cover that, but I will advise you to read that on your own. What do they mean by, formative and summative assessment? All right. Formative is like, that's continuously done throughout the teaching, and then summative is the one that is done at the end of the year or a test, for instance. And then diagnostic assessment, like, seeing the barriers, the strength, difficulties that the learners have. And then we've got informal and formal methods for teaching and assessing. For formal and informal methods. So you read this to get an idea. And then we've got evaluation, criterion, reference, grading. So we've got grades A, B, C. It's like norm, reference. And then criterion is like, having specific objectives that you want to see that the learners have attained. So read this on your own. And then we have got the grade descriptors. So they say that for the summative achievement, like at the end of the year, the learners can either like get the highest score, which is an A, and the lowest is E. But then if they don't attain E, they get a U. And here we have got more like a table describing like what is A, so 80% and more, and then they have described that. The competency is described B, C, D, E, U, and then the description. Now here we have got now conducting and recording assessment. Continuous assessment should be planned ahead of time, and it should be at the beginning of the year, and then it should be kept as simple as possible, and marks given, they should be recorded, all right, in the continuous assessment form, and we'll see that a little bit later. And we have got assessment objectives, like what are the objectives of the assessment when it comes to listening and responding, like listening. You can just say listening, but they should be responding to see that they have understood what they have listened to. And these are the learning objective, assessment objectives. So they will listen to and comprehend information. So these are the ones. We have 4 of those. And when it comes to reading, when they read and respond, so read aloud to convey understanding of the text. And the other 2. In writing, learners should be able to write simple, complex, compound sentences, write well-structured paragraph, and so on. And then grammar, you said learners should be able to exercise accuracy in spelling, punctuation, and grammar, and so forth. All right. So those are the learning assessment objectives for this phase. And then moving on, continuous assessment detailed guidelines. So they give you guidelines of what a teacher should do when it comes to continuous assessment. And then they have, okay, so this is the general one. And then we've got now the listening. What do they need to do? And then we have got the CA record sheet. That's where you will, enter CA for listening comprehension. And here we've got a reading and a literature, and then they give you the detailed guidelines of how you should record and where the CA is coming from. And then we have got prose, So this is reading and literature. And then we've got prose, either novel or short story or short drama, poetry, and then the descriptive per grades. So in grade 8, they have 8 poems and 2 short stories and a novel, all compulsory. In grade 9 is one more, like extra, and they have a novel and a drama. Extensive, they even have recommendation of extensive reading. What do they need to read extensively? Like extra reading and not intensive reading, like reading something that they will be given like list comprehension questions to complete. And then we move on to reading and directed writing. So at least one task should be completed, and more information on that. Continuous assessment, what do they need to work on? So grade 8, they need to write compositional essay of this amount of words, but for grade 9 is more short task. The words, you see that there's a difference in wording because of the grades. And here is a summary now of continuous assessment. Where is the continuous assessment coming from? We've got the listening section. It has got everyday interaction, preparation, speech, listening, comprehension times 2, so which is 20. And then the total is 40. And then directed writing, reading and directed writing is 20. All right. Literature is also 20. It's like 2 tasks, 2 times 2, 20. And continuous assessment composition is 10. Shorter piece is 10. And then the total is 20. In the end, it's going to be 100. All right. So that's the amount of work that they will have to do as continuous assessment. And then end of term marks, like the continuous assessment, like it ends up to 100. And then it explains to you like how you do it. Oh yeah. And then they say that don't always have learners write short pieces, continuous assessment, continuous writing at the end of the day, just to keep them in school, because apparently it yields negative attitude. So you should avoid doing this at the end. You should do it. So that is to say, now you should do the continuous assessment writing throughout the semesters. End of year examination. Here we've got detailed guidelines of how you should carry it out. Do you understand? You are not left alone. You are given details of this information of what you need to do, what is expected of you. Like you just don't need to swim aimlessly, all right, figuratively, when it comes to teaching. And they have got 4 papers in grade 8 and 9. They will have 4 papers. Paper 1 is reading and directed writing. And this paper is divided into two sections. The first section is just reading skills, and then it has 3 parts. And directed writing also has got 3 parts, and it gives you details of like what each part is consisting of. And then when you do your class activities, you can do such activities in your class too, so that the learners are used to this type of exercises or activities. And then the directed writing is also the same, 3 parts, and then it gives you details of what will be included in each part, and then how many marks. And the examination is definitely going to be just like this. So you have to help your learners be familiar with this type of structure, so that they will not be surprised when they get into the examination. The duration of this paper is 2 hours, and the mark is 40. Continuous assessment has got 2 sections as well. Section A is longer piece that they have to write, and here's the number of words that they need to write and what type of text that they're going to write. Section B is a shorter piece, which is 120 to 150 for grade 8s and 150 to 180 for grade 9s. And then these other topics that they can 4 topics, and then they have to the topics that they're going to include, and then the type of writing that they will have. And then they've even given the marks, like how many marks are they going to get. So we have got 25 plus 15, 40 divided by 2 is 20, and it's out of 1 hour, 30 minutes. It's a long. Paper 3, we have got listening comprehension. It has got only 1 section, but it had 2 sections with 2 parts each. And then the type of listening text that they will have and how many marks. In section 2, 2 parts as well, and then they give you details of what type of texts, listening text that they're going to get. And the approximate time for this paper is 30 minutes and the mark is out of 20. And we have got now the fourth paper, literature, and literature has got 3 parts. First part is poetry, novel, part 3 is short story. And how many marks do they get? And it's out of 60 because each one is 20 divided by 3 is 20, and it takes about 1 hour 30 minutes to complete. And here they tell you this one looks basically the same, but I think the length is gonna be a little bit longer compared to this one, but the description is basically the same. Yeah, the hours, they are the same too. All right, promotional marks. So what will happen is that at the end of the year, 50% is are going to come from the continuous assessment, and 50 is going to come from the examination. So it's like 50-50. They have a chance really to gain from both continuous assessment, listening and speaking, reading and writing, grammar and vocabulary. It's like 100, and then it's gonna end up into 50. And we have seen like where the 100 marks come from. And then here, when it comes to a written examination, paper 1 has more marks, which is 40, and is 20% the weight. And paper 2 is 23, and 4 is also 20, which weighs 10%, but it makes up now the 50% that needs to be added here. So it's gonna be 100. You see here it's also 100, but we divide this by 2 to make it 50%, right? Divide by 2, make it 50%. And then you add these 2 together to make up 100% at the end of the year. And here we have got now specification grid, like continuous assessment will include everything. Paper 1 will only include this and this, all right? And then paper 2 will only include this. Paper 3 will only include this, and paper 4 will only include this. Like assessment objective, like. And then we have got the assessment objective. You have to go back and read the different assessment objective, like which objectives are going to be tested in which papers. So you have to go back to familiarize yourself with those. And then we've got assessment rubrics. We have them at the end of this very paper, but then before that they provide you with glossary, like providing you with terms that you need to know. What is paraphrasing, summarizing? They give you explanation right there, and then categorizing and more terminologies that you need to know when you're reading this syllabus. And then here we have got now a sample of a continuous assessment record sheet, like how you record the learner's continuous assessment. And we have seen like listening comprehension should be 10-10, like each semester they need to get that, because we have 3 semesters. This is one learner, and then first semester you record all their continuous assessment, all right? And then they are divided: listening and speaking, listening, everyday speaking, reading and directed writing, literature, continuous assessment. And then it gives you the total for each category, and then you have to give the learners the total. And then in the end it should be 300, because it's 3 semesters. Every semester they have a chance to get 100. It's gonna be 300, but then you average it to come to 100. So you write it here, and then you write the examination mark. How many points did I get in the examination mark? The subtotal of this, like the CA and the examination, is 200, and then you divide it by 2 to give you 100, like the promotional mark. That's what they have there. It's well organized. You don't have to work extra hard. Like you have this, you can copy and paste it or type it up for your classes, and it's given to you. And then we have got the English language marking grid for longer pieces. So continuous assessment, essays, like how do you grade them, language usage, and here are the points that you give them for the language usage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have got the categories or criteria. We have got 5 criteria for language usage. And content and organization, we've got also 5 criteria, and then here we have got the marks. So this is for the language usage. They can get out of 10, like that's the max. And then the content, we have got 10, like it's out of 20. 20 is the max they can get here, like when they have the highest, and it becomes lower. So when they go to 5, it means their performance is really weak. 1 is high, 2 is, like gradually goes lower this way. Here also, like the highest is 1, and then gradually goes to the lowest points that learners can get. So when they come here, little to no understanding or random simple answers, and then here they virtually have nothing. The lowest that they can possibly get is a 1 or 1 to 2 when it comes to content and organization. All right. So the upper one is for language and usage, and then this one is for content and structure. Upper, language usage, content organization. They even give you like glossary terms that are used in the grading marking grid. And then we have got longer pieces, composition, examination. So this one is for the CA, right? Continuous assessment. And then longer pieces during the examination, they have a different marking grid that they get. It's different. Here the marks, so you just look here, how many marks do they get? And it's the same. It's like, okay, if they are here, 1 and 1, they get about here. Their marks will run between 23 to 25. If they get, let's say 1 and 2, they get about that. But then if they get 2 and 2 here, they get the mark that falls here. And then if they get 3 and 3, they run around here. But then maybe their language is at number 2, but then their content and format is 3, then their mark will range from 14 to 16. So I hope that makes sense, like common sense, right? But then let's say their content and format is really poor, but then their language usage is really good, and then they can get up to their marks will range from here to 13, 11 to 13. But then if it's poor, and then it's almost poor, like it's still 5, and then it's almost poor, like it's 4, then the marks will range from 2 to 4. All right, so that's what we have. And then how do you mark now the shorter pieces for continuous assessment, like the CA that they do throughout the year? This is how they'll be graded, and this is the marks that they get. All right. And for the examination, it's different in marks, and this is how they get their marks. And that's it. That's all that we have for the JSC syllabus. Now we are going to look at the activity that you did during this class. Activity. So we have got, for this activity, we just basically did true or false that you have done. And here we've got, these syllabus topics are unrelated to other JSC subjects is false, because we have seen like how the subjects are linked to other the language is related to other subjects, or what they call cross-curricular issues, right, topic. The learner's development of communication and competency and language literacy is expected by the end of the phase. That is true. They're expected to develop, competencies in communication and language literacy. Next, the learner's exposure and experiences in this phase are expected to enhance their broader knowledge, critical thinking skills, aesthetics, sensibility, positive attitudes, moral values, and personal growth. That is true. We have seen that. They're expected to develop these soft skills, all right, as they are exposed to the learning materials and experiences in the classroom. Mainstream schools can include learners with any impairment. That is true. We have seen that. you can find learners with impairment, and it's up to you as a teacher to acquaint yourself to the different impairments and how they affect the learners and how you can effectively help them learn. Next, teachers are not required to know the impact of the learner's impairment has on their learning, English learning, and know how to assist them. That is false. You are expected to know. We have seen that, like, you need to know, how does the impairment affect the learners? How do you then help them? How do you assist them to learn better? Link to other subjects and cross-cultural issues are stated in the syllabus. That's true. We have seen that table that has got like environmental studies and the different topics. ICT, like, we have that stated. The approach to be used in presenting and learning the content presented in the syllabus is learner-centered. It's true. We have seen that. Learner-centered throughout all the school phases. It should be learner-centered rather than teacher-centered. Learner-centered education advocates for learners to become central and active in their learning process by participating, contributing, producing individually, cooperatively as much as possible. That's true. They need to work together. All right. The learner-centered education rarely puts into consideration the learner's needs, prior knowledge, and experiences. That's false, because we need to think about their needs so that when we teach, we help them, we help cater for those needs and their prior knowledge and experiences. The teachers need to stick to the structure sequence of the lesson with limited flexibility. That is false. Like, when you have created your lesson plan, you need to be very flexible, all right? Because sometimes the lesson, you might need to change up some activities. The one that you thought that should come first, you might find out that it's best to do it later, and then you do the one that was supposed to be done last, for instance. And then when you see that the learners are not really understanding what you're saying, then it means that you might need to change up the method that you're using to help the learners understand. Or you might change up, like, not doing all the activities because you're running out of time. So you give this activity as a homework. So you have to be flexible. All right. And then next, the teachers need to adhere to the strategy with which they are very comfortable. No, because your strategy has your teaching methods or teaching strategies need to vary, because the learners have different needs. There are those who learn best when they are listening. There are those who learn best when they are seeing. There are those who learn best when they are touching, to understand. So which means that you have to change up the way you teach. All right, you have to change it up. You just don't stick to one strategy. The learning objectives and competencies are stated under 6 essential skills. We have got listening, speaking, reading, which includes literature, vocabulary, and grammar usage. This is false, because we don't have vocabulary. Vocabulary is not stated explicitly like the other skills. And then 14, the writing skills learning content is divided into creative and directed writing. So the writing skills, the learning content has got the writing skill, and that writing skill is divided in directed writing and creative writing. That is true. This syllabus vaguely presents its competency that learners need to acquire. I think I would say is false. I told you that this syllabus has more specific, has more examples. It's not vague. All right, when it comes to their competencies, how they are stated, they are more specific because they give you examples. And I think that's what makes the syllabus longer compared to the other syllabi. The JSC syllabus encompasses descriptions of the different types of assessment approaches and method to be used. It has their approaches, like there is description of those approaches of like how you need to assess, and then they give you the examples of how you're going to assess the learners. I mean, all that is described is given in the syllabus, right? We have got the different terms, and then they've given you like how are you going to mark, or how are the learners going to get their CA marks, and how are they going to be assessed in, let's say, the final examination. Is true. That is true. And then the JSC syllabus excluded the assessment objective for important skills. That's false. We have seen the different assessment objectives, like for the listening and responding, reading and responding, writing and grammar usage. I think all those were, and the writing, they're all stipulated there. And the speaking, they're all stated. This syllabus provides detailed guidelines on how to carry out the continuous assessment. Yes, it's very detailed, and I told you that you read more about that on your own. And then 19, this syllabus omitted the detailed guideline of how to carry out the final examination. That is false, because it's provided. They have given you how do you carry out the final examination. Continuous assessment contribute 40%. The final examination contributes 60% towards the promotional mark of the learners. That's false, because we say that it's 50-50. All right, they get marks, 50% from continuous assessment and 50% from final examination. The syllabus has description and definition of some essential words needed when reading the syllabus. That's true. They have a glossary of terms that you need to know that are helpful to know when you're reading the syllabus. Continuous assessment record sheet is unprovided. That's false, because it's provided, like that detailed continuous assessment. Even the examination marks are also stated on that record sheet. The marking rubrics for continuous assessment are the same as the marking rubrics for examination. No, it's false. We have seen that shorter, we have seen marking grid for longer pieces of writing for continuous assessment, and longer pieces of writing for examination, and shorter pieces for continuous assessment, and shorter pieces for examination. So they are different. They're not all the same. All right, that's the end of activity 2 for this syllabus, the junior secondary syllabus. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope this is helpful for you. I know it's helpful for you to know. Anyways, I will talk to you in the next lesson. Bye for now.